well, it's actually in Avondale, but yeah, that's Decatur. So yeah, at the Banjo Lounge. Yeah.
You gonna check YouTube?
It's fun, and it's an outdoor gig, and it'll be. I mean, if it rains, we can move inside. But they have a little bookstore there, and it's a nice little stage, and it's lovely. Yeah.
Christian, you want a camera over here too, or just?
No, I don't play out very much around here. I've just toured England and Scotland, so yeah. I mean, I play out occasionally. I'm actually my next show is in North Carolina, and then I have one in Baltimore. So yeah, so I go. I'm on the road quite a bit. So yeah.
You're having a good time.
Well, it's just I've been doing it my whole life. I mean, it's not. It's my job. Yeah. So anyway.
Out there anyway. Are you guys going?
Yeah.
Tomorrow night? Yeah. You should go too.
Just found out.
Well, come.
I
would love it if people would come because I don't often do these days. I don't do a lot of concert venues, and this is a concert.
Where is it?
It's in Avondale. It's like in Decatur,
Okay.
and on College Avenue
Did you
there.
post about it?
Yeah, it should be up. She's posted it. If you go to Banjo Lounge, it's listed.
And go now.
Like a
Are you
banjo.
staying in or are you going?
I should go.
Okay.
Because I'm in quality control. I can't hear. So.
In
Alright,
Decatur.
guys.
Where's greater?
Nice meeting you.
See you guys. Have fun.
Okay. That's good. Well, hold on, me up and under it so that, yeah, for the guitar thing, and then I'll put it down after. All right, there we go. That's good.
Is that good?
Uh huh.
Okay, I'll set it up. Woo!
What fun! We'll have fun, fun, fun when her daddy takes the T-bird away.
Fun, fun, fun.
I need to probably sit up a little bit more so I don't look like a little toadstool. Oh, yes, I can. Oh, honey. So do you want me to do the song first? And then...
Yeah, and then I'll come and take your guitar and keep rolling, and then
All right.
we'll just kick it off.
Okay. Sounds good. So, Christian, what's your last name?
Jansen.
Jansen? Mm-hmm. Whenever you're ready, you want to
Get
give me
one
a...
last.
Make sure nothing's panned. And everything's straight. And then if you're going to just record her, cut our mics out. So it's just her two inputs.
All right, Brooksie, can I get another mic check?
Yes, you can. 1, 2, 3.
Play and.
Went to the chapel, said me a prayer, but I don't know if anyone heard. Been trying so hard. Okay, ready? Is that enough? Does it come easy for someone like me, broken and battle scarred? Whoever said it was easy, no, they were telling you lies. All right. You ready? I went to the chapel, said me a prayer, but I don't know if anyone heard. Lit up a votive, examined my motives, is feeling just a little absurd. And I've been trying so hard to give unconditional love, but it doesn't come easy for someone like me, broken and battle scarred. I went to the forest and lit me a fire, and I sat there watching it burn. I thought about somebody losing a loved one who doesn't know which way to turn. And I've been trying so hard to give unconditional love, but it doesn't come easy for someone like me, broken and battle scarred. Whoever said it was easy, you know they were telling you lies. Whoever said it was easy, not I. Went to the doctor to get a prescription, something to settle my nerves. But it did not help me, just fueled my addiction, ended up making it worse. And I've been trying so hard to give unconditional love, it doesn't come easy for someone like me, broken and battle scarred. Whoever said it was easy, no, they were telling you lies. Whoever said it was easy, not I. I never said it was easy. No, I wouldn't tell you no lies. Whoever said it was easy, not I.
Yeah.
Thank y'all. Thank you very much.
Wait, she's only doing one song?
You want me to do another one? Okay, I can do another one. Let's see.
Kidding?
All right, let's see. You want another recovery song?
Whatever you want to do.
All right, let's see.
You got one you want?
Let's see if I can remember it. Hold on. I have to remember it. Oh, yeah. Okay, I got it. All right. Sweet southern gentleman, always aiming to please. He's opening doors and lighting matches, charm the birds off the trees. He'll treat you special, your wish is his command. Just don't count on him when there's a bottle in his hand. 'Cause first he'll stop talking, stop listening to. He'll get a little crazy, you won't know what to do. He'll say sorry, you'll have to take your stand. And don't count on him when there's a bottle in his hand. 'Cause you know he's gonna change, you know he's gonna change. Don't count on him when there's a bottle in his his hand. Big city lady, so chic and tan, so sophisticated, always with the right man, seen in all the same places, always making plans. Just don't count on her when there's a bottle in her hand. 'Cause first she'll start talking, start crying too. She'll get a little crazy, you won't know what to do. She'll beg forgiveness, you'll have to take your stand. And don't count on her when there's a bottle in her hand. 'Cause you know she's gonna change, you know she's gonna change. Don't count on her when there's a bottle in her hand. Yeah, you know she's gonna change, you know she's gonna change. Don't count on her when there's a bottle in her hand. I know a thing or two about alcoholics. There you go.
Awesome.
Enjoy.
Whoa.
Yeah, you might want to do that. Alrighty. Take my picks off.
Wow.
Well, glad you liked them. I don't write, I'm not a recovery artist, but I've been in recovery for so long that my songs tend to reflect some of that, you know, and occasionally you just have to talk about it, you know.
Our mic's up?
Which one? I don't know if
No, I gotta turn.
which channel?
You don't need to do that, honey. Just leave it. I'll get it later, okay? Cool.
Yeah, get our mics up and then.
When we can start talking. I'm gonna turn a little bit so I can see your face. Okay. The gangsta lean.
We good?
Okay. Help me, Rhonda. Help me, Rhonda.
Can I get a mic check?
Mic check, 1, 2, 1, 2.
Check, check, check.
Hello.
Check, check, check.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Number 9. Number 9. You know where that's from?
Of course.
Number 9.
Check, 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 check.
We got it?
Yep.
Okie doke.
I have to remember to sit up so I don't look like Happy Buddha.
That's what I just said. I don't want to look like a toadstool.
So, all right, we're going to do the intro in a minute, but I want to just. So, you said you're not a recovery artist, but it can't help but slip out.
Well, it's more that I believe that music is for everyone. And
Yeah.
I'm not a real person who puts music into genres like this is a certain kind of, like
Yeah.
the blues can be more than the blues, or folk can be more than folk, or rock and roll can be a country song. You know, I think it can all kind of cross over and mix together. But I know people and have been part of a recovery community for so long that that's what I have to talk about.
Yeah. So, let's talk about that first song. Just tell me about the process for you writing that. Do you write it and then do the music? And where's the inspiration for that first song?
Well, actually, I started back writing some songs when I got divorced, to be frank, and I was talking with my mandolin player. Lisa K. Howard is a mandolin player that I work with. She's in Val Smith's band. She's a great musician. And I was just thinking about, what it's like to try to find a God of your understanding, what it's like to think about that sort of thing. And, it's not easy. And the other thing, too, is people think because you've been sober a long time, oh, it must have been easy for you. Try being me. It's not that easy being sober, and some days it's a lot harder than others. And so that's kind of what the song was about. Whoever said it was easy? Yeah. And I really believe that if you want to give up bad habits that include alcohol, drugs, any other thing that you happen to be addicted to, you have to develop a discipline, and it is hard work. So that's just my opinion.
Yeah. But that was the inspiration for that.
Yeah. And also, but the idea too, I've had several friends lose children to addiction and recovery, because I've been around a long time, and they've lost them to addiction. They didn't find recovery is a better way to put it. Yeah. And so the whole thing about go to the forest, light a fire, and, think about people who've lost loved ones, and how lucky I am that I survived and that I was able to have children and have a great life. Yeah. So I'm very lucky.
I love that you used like two places where people usually are going to look for a conscious contact with God, church and nature. And still, it's not easy.
Nope.
Right.
It isn't easy. And also, I came from a very liberal Unitarian Universalist background. So I didn't have a God of my understanding that was very traditional or very concrete. So I was looking for a higher power in the group, and I was looking for a higher power wherever I could find it. Yeah. And nature seemed to work pretty well for me. But once again, none of this is easy. So that's what I wanted. That was really the message, was whoever said it was easy. Yeah. And that's a sing-along. That part's a sing-along.
Yeah. Everyone can get that part.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you said that growing up with this Unitarian background, can you just, for someone who might not understand what that is, just break that down a little bit?
Sure. I was born down here in Atlanta, and my parents were both from here, and my father went to Duke and went to Emory, and he was a lawyer in the Air Force when we were kids, and we were raised Methodist as my early life. I was a Methodist, but we moved to the Virginia, D.C. area, and there was a picnic. And my mother went to the picnic, and they wouldn't let black people come, and it made her mad. And so she went across the street to the Unitarian Church where they let black people in. Wow. And my father started listening to a guy named A. Powell Davies, who was a famous Unitarian Universalist minister. And at the time, it was just Unitarian. They combined in the 60s. And he decided to go back to school, to theology school, and he ended up at Howard University, the only white man in his class in 1964. Wow. So, yeah, I lived a very kind of political, radical life, and my father became a Unitarian minister after being a lawyer in the Air Force. Wow. So, yeah, so my childhood was very different than most.
Yeah. Did you notice that he took that kind of, because lawyers are kind of binary in their thinking, there's a law and this is the path. You think he took that and put that approach when in his ministry?
It's really hard to say, because I think he used the law as the path to finding more equality for people of color. Because he wrote, and also against the war, because he was against the Vietnam War. And he wrote a law in Massachusetts that no citizen should be required to serve in an illegal war. Wow. And it passed in Massachusetts. Whoa. It didn't pass in the United States, obviously, but so he felt that the law was the path to finding a way to make it more equal for more people. Yeah. So it was kind of cool. Yeah. Different kind of a childhood than many.
Yeah. It sounds like it. It sounds like it reminds me of this, I don't know, saying structure breeds freedom. Right? So, like, from structure, you get more freedom.
I agree. Well, my mother is a poet, she's rest her soul. She's no longer with us. But we used to talk about things like iambic pentameter, which is Shakespeare wrote in iambic pentameter, which is a style of phrasing. It's I'll look to like if looking like he moved, that kind of phrasing. And having a structure like that, then you have to create a song or create words that will fit in the structure. Yeah. And in many ways, the structure gives you more creativity. Just that's what I felt. That's why I like songwriting, because it's limited. You got 3.5 minutes to get your point across.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just quoted out of some literature was talking about our dependence on electricity and how our dependence on electricity makes us more independent.
Yeah.
And of course, their point is trying to get to this higher power, God consciousness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the idea to be dependent on this greater thing at first can seem like it's limiting, but in actuality, it becomes the thing and the foundation in which you can do so much from.
Right. Well, it's really getting out of your own way.
Yeah.
That's how I look at, and that's how I came up in recovery. I didn't worry about finding a God of my understanding. What I worried about was staying sober one day at a time.
Yeah.
That was the most important thing. And I saw that this group of people could do it. And I could, and I would look at things like suspension bridges. It took more than one person to build one. You couldn't do it by yourself. You had to have other people help you. And so I looked to the group to help me for many, many years. And then I developed a spiritual life that evolved for me, and it's been wonderful, and I've enjoyed it. And I don't know exactly how to express it to the general public, but it's more nature-based. It's kind of, I come from sort of a more nature-based God of my understanding. So.
Yeah. How long during that process of growth, right, where this group is kind of that higher consciousness that you're connecting to, does it expand into what it is?
It took me at least 10 years.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And that's the other thing, too, is that I think a lot of people put in, this is just me talking, but
Yes.
a lot of people put too much emphasis on finding that God, because then they don't find something that works for them or that feels like it ought to be magical enough. Yeah. And so guess what they do? Yeah. They drink again, they drug again, they give up. Whereas I was just told, don't drink between meetings. Kept it real simple. Yeah. Keep it real simple. And we were talking about this earlier. My whole thing is, when it comes to not picking up a substance that's going to hurt you, what you have to, there's only one thing you ever should ask yourself is, what am I going to do instead? That's it. Just what am I going to do instead? And recovery programs give you a format and a way and a method, which you probably didn't learn when you were younger because you were doing other stuff and you were getting high and you were having fun and you weren't paying attention. Right. So that you start to pay attention to those things. And it brings you up to square one, to a basic platform where you can then begin to live a life like people who don't have addiction problems live a life. Yeah. We get the chance to just sort of catch up. Yeah. And the program will give you all those things, whatever kind of program you want to be part of. But, and I'm careful about being specific on those areas.
Absolutely,
yeah, I'm careful about that. But, I have been working in recovery programs a long time.
Yeah. The keep it simple thing, I find, I don't like it because I'm special and I'm unique and I should have a custom built solution, and anything that's simple is boring. And so, but simplifying things, again, leads to the freedom, right? But it takes a long time to, I guess, accept that, because there's this thing in me that wants to consistently fight against anything that's like drilling it down to as simple as, don't drink and don't be a dick, right? Like, here's a real simple thing. Just don't drink and you can accomplish so much more. And
here's the thing. This is how I do you brush your teeth every day?
Yes.
Okay, well then you should go to meetings.
Yeah.
That's simple. Do you brush your teeth? If you don't brush your teeth, you're going to get cavities and your teeth are going to fall out. If you don't go to meetings, your brain's not going to work the way it should be working, because we have a dopamine deficit or whatever it is. They have all kinds of science behind it now that they can show you the pictures. Yeah. And I didn't go to rehab. I got sober. I got sober October 4th, 1987.
Okay.
So I've been sober. I'll be picking up 36 years on October 4th.
Congratulations.
So sober a long time. And I am not a relapser. I'm a first nighter. I came in and I never left. Now, that doesn't, my mother, God rest her soul, she tried to start getting sober at age 60. It took her 10 years. She would throw the big books away. She would correct the grammar. And she was a much nicer person than I am, and much sweeter. and was not a bad person getting good. She was a sick person getting well.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing, is that everybody puts all this moral stuff on recovery. It's got nothing to do with morality.
Yeah.
It has to do with a biological imperative that affects behavior.
Yeah.
So if you want to change your behavior, you're going to have to do certain things. Finding a power greater than yourself, finding a spiritual component to your life so that your life includes mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual components
Yeah.
will lead to a well-rounded life, even for someone with an addiction problem.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's how it works. But that doesn't mean it's easy to do that. You know, women tend to lead with emotion. Men tend to hide the emotion and then explode. We have both going on in, throw in addiction problems, and it's really hard to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Or what's the other line from the other song, which is, once they got a bottle in their hand,
Yep.
totally transformed.
Well, that's the other thing, is that many, many people transform completely. Some don't.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, when you were talking about your uniqueness, there is a level that you are unique. Every person is different. Some people come into recovery when they're, they get really bad, really young, and it gets really hard. Other people develop, I look at it like juvenile diabetes and adult diabetes, where, some people get hit hard and fast when they're young, and others, it develops over time. And it's not as bad for them. And, they may not ever get sober. They may die of a liver problem at 62 rather than living to be 80. There's
Right.
different things happen. We have to be aware that not everyone's the same, but we do need to understand that there's only one cure, which is abstinence.
Yeah.
That's the only guarantee, is
Right.
abstinence. That's it.
So during these 10 years, you must have had a fellowship or a foundation of friends and community that was allowing you the space to not have to have some, to your point, which like some clear idea of what God is or higher power is.
I really don't. Yes, I had a recovery program, and I didn't focus on whether or not, quote unquote, I had a higher power. That just wasn't a focus for me. What was a focus for me was staying sober and figuring out ways to manage my life emotionally, physically, and spiritually so that I would be happy when I woke up in the morning. It's the key to the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that what I have seen over the many years I've been sober is people find the spirit life that works for them. And if you're a traditionalist and you enjoy a traditional, say, for example, Christian background, many people return to a more traditional God. Some do not, because some felt that was punishing.
Yeah.
So they want to find a God, a loving God.
Yeah.
For me, I felt like I sort of already had that. I had a kind of a connection with the universe that I just had to figure out how to let people help me stay sober. My sponsor, I was pregnant. I got sober in October of '87, and then I had my son in June of 1990. Okay, and I had a difficult pregnancy. I was older, and I was laid up for 4 months. I was in bed so that I could have a kid. And my sponsor brought a meeting to my house every week.
Wow.
And I signed up for the hotline so that I could help somebody, although I could, I was an older mother. I was frightened. I didn't know what to do. But that's the thing that happens, is that this support shows up. And it looks different to different people. It can be the strangest people help you. You just never know, you never know where the message is going to come from.
Yeah.
And I started studying, after my son was born, I started studying sort of more women's studies and things like that. And I learned a little bit more about intuition. And it says we intuitively understand situations that used to baffle us.
Yeah.
And so I began to accept that guidance, which some would call it God-given, but the guidance coming from the universe, being more susceptible and more available to the good guidance that comes through us so that we can follow a path that's more meaningful.
Do you think that you had that intuition ability before and just
Absolutely.
didn't know what to do with it?
Absolutely, I
Yeah.
do, and it used to scare me.
Yeah.
It was scary. I didn't know what it was, and it wasn't until I began to study about it and learn. I work with a woman who is also a trained Lakota shaman, and so she works with me, and we have been teaching a course in intuition for 25 years. We taught at the Chautauqua Institute for 10 years, and we've developed a program to help people honor, access, develop, and include intuition as part of their intellect.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of fun, and it's been my spiritual path. So
Yeah.
it's been a lot of fun.
It's been interesting to me because there's several people over the years that we've been interviewing people and talking to people, how many have that and discover it in sobriety, in recovery. They discover this intuition thing that was always there, but was maybe, I've heard people describe it as anxiety, or I've had people describe it as, uncertainty and confusion, and how I know for me, like one of the things that drugs and alcohol did for me was it kind of quieted everything, it dulled it all. And then I could feel like I could do one thing, right? And not knowing that there was this intuitive thing within me that I just didn't know, was never really exposed to or given the opportunity to understand or taught that it was even something. So that's really cool that you've developed something that can help people to, I don't know, hone it or become aware of it, to understand
It's
it.
really about being able to differentiate it from fear. That's another piece of it, because when guidance can come from, you can be afraid. A lot of us, have a lot of fear that we live. You can either live in faith or you can live in fear. And one of the things about learning to trust your intuitive side, which is really, Einstein used to say, intuition is the highest form of intellect. And so it's not, and I'm not even being too woo-woo about this. I can go there, but we don't have to. You can, look at firemen, look at policemen, look at nurses. They'll have two patients, and they'll know which one is more important and which one for needing help right that minute. They'll be able to tell because they will have developed their intellectual abilities, and then they will trust.
Yeah. And
And then once you do the trust, then you can allow for the intuitive to open for you. So it doesn't exist without the help of the intellect. And
Right.
that's also when you read the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, they talk a little bit about this as well when you
Yeah.
read that book. So these are things that we have to work with. And I've been doing this work for a long time, and it has helped me to develop a path that's open to things I would never have expected to happen.
yeah.
It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, and I like that the way that you described it is that it's not independent of the intellect, that they're working together, right? That there's a symbiotic relationship between the two. And I think sometimes spirit, just for a word, right, is often described as in opposition to material. And that's such a, I don't know, for me, it's such a hard place to be in, right? Because now you have these two competing things, and you dip into the spirit or you're in the material.
Yes, and that's linear. That's linear.
Right.
And when you stop being linear,
Yeah.
and when you think of everything in motion, in spirals,
Yeah.
think of it that way, like DNA. Look at all the way that the earth is made.
Yeah.
Everything is circles. It's all circular. So the way Nina Gibson and I, who teach this intuition workshop, and we've been doing it for many years, what we talk about is mind, body, emotion, and spirit, are the four directions. And, at earth, air, fire, and water, and there's all kinds of ways you can look at it.
Yeah.
But find what works for you. I'm not suggesting that my way is the only way. There are lots of different ways to do it. But what I have seen for so many, I mostly work with women, and they lead with emotion, and they allow emotion to run riot in ways that makes it difficult for them to function day to day. So finding ways to encourage physicality, to encourage exercise, things like that, good self-care.
Yeah.
Encourage mental acuity. Develop your brain power. Develop your mental self. And allow your emotions to be part of your spiritual life, but to not be the only thing. So you can also allow your mental health to be part of your spiritual life. You can study as part of your spiritual life. So these are things that you mix them all together, and what have you got? Then you have a well-rounded, happy life, which you know is limited. You know you're going to screw up. You're not going to do it perfectly, but you can enjoy the journey.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love the way you describe that. And I think, my experience is I think women do have a higher level of intuition. Also, I've found in my life, women seem to have a much easier time with faith. That's just my experience.
But I'll mention that CEOs all talk about gut feelings, don't they?
Yeah.
Heads of corporations all use their intuition. They just don't call it that. They
Right.
call it, oh, I got a gut feeling.
Yeah.
They give it a more masculine kind of an edge.
Right.
But the truth is that women tend to be more open to discuss things like intuition.
Yeah.
Men have it in the same amount as any woman would have it.
Yeah.
However, they don't express it as easily and as often because they're not culturally encouraged to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but I think the fellowship that I have and the groups of people that I have in my life, the other men in my life, for a long time, I wouldn't talk about things that was going on because I thought, well, it's not directly related to me getting high or drunk.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to talk about that in my recovery fellowship, right? And then I had a friend who I've shared about a lot where when we were on the phone, he would start bringing in his life into our conversations. And it was like this light bulb went off and this connection of like, oh, it's okay for me to talk about how all of these things are also affecting me. And it just opened up a whole level of communication for me. And so I began to talk about the things that rattle around in here. And the more that I would talk about them, and that's become my process, is if it's rattling, I get it out, and then it doesn't have the power it did. But when it just stays rattling in there, it can create a lot of chaos. And I don't have to get drunk or high to create chaos.
Well, it's very difficult for men because, and women also, one of our problems is that as a rule for men, straight men, I'm going to talk about straight men, you all only talk intimately or directly, about real feelings to the person that you're married to or that you're sleeping with.
Right.
You don't talk to anyone else about that. And so when all of a sudden women are in an AA meeting thinking, and these men are telling the truth, they're talking about their feelings and all this stuff, you feel like, wow, I must have gone out with that guy and forgot, because you really don't understand how men can actually do that because you're not used to it. And the men certainly aren't used to it. And it can be very confusing, which is one of the reasons they talk about in early recovery, be very careful about getting involved with somebody. Because you're just not used to being honest and direct with someone who you're not sleeping with. And so it's just something to pay attention to in the first couple of years of recovery. Yeah. Because, and I've always found that kind of a fascinating thing. I went to a meeting and this guy was telling me about, he was a speaker. And he'd had a number of years sober, and I was about 2.5 years sober. And he was good looking, and he was and I was a married lady. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm happily married, all this. But I felt like I must have slept with the guy because he was telling these truths, and it just felt so weird. Yeah. So that's one of the things we have to pay attention to, men and women in the same room together, being aware that we confuse intimacy and sexuality. Yeah,
or sexuality and spirituality even. I think because there's such a connectedness. When you become spiritually connected with someone, it is a level of intimacy that for a lot of us, we'd only know that level of intimacy in sex.
Correct. So it's important. And yes, so spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically, it's developing the M word. Moderation. Oh. Everybody hates that word. Everybody hates. I know they all think I'm going to say something really crazy, and that's something really crazy for an alcoholic. Yeah. The M word. Yeah. We don't do moderation. No. And so we have to learn how. And I used to have to call my sponsor and ask her, am I responding normally to something? Because I tell my girls, I don't know the difference between a hangnail and a heart attack. When it comes to feeling, I don't know the difference. Sometimes, somebody will die and I will feel nothing. And somebody will cut me off in traffic and I want to kill them. So when we get sober, our emotions are not in sync with what is appropriate because we've dulled them. We haven't felt them, so we don't know what we're feeling. So I used to have to call my sponsor and go, is this an appropriate response? Because I really, truly didn't know.
Yeah.
And she would help me to figure it out. And, over time, I've gotten better at that, but over the years, but I'm not always great at it to this day, and I've been doing it a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think over years it's taken me to stop believing everything I think, right? Because I can think a lot of things, and for a long time, even without using and drinking, it was like I would believe every thought because I'm a creative, and so part of my, I would say, purpose on this planet is to take something that doesn't exist and then make it exist, right? And so I have to trust this thing that's moving here and guiding me. And so I was taking that. Once I got sober, it was really hard to begin to differentiate all that and what I do with that. And so I, at first, was just believe it if I thought it, right? It was some sort of, I don't know what. And then I would just get into I would just become miserable. And so it's like, how many times was I going in that cycle until, I realized that just because I think it doesn't mean it's true.
Right. Well, and we say feelings aren't facts.
Right.
And in addition, your brain's a bad neighborhood and you do not want to walk around in there alone. That's another old saying that I just love because it's true. Because my brain, I call it the squirrel cage. It starts to spin and it goes, remember how they used to have the chewing gum under, you would take the old chewing gum and chew it again. And that's what you can do with resentments. You can just chew them again. Yeah. So it's taken a minute and recognizing that your brain has addiction as part of its makeup after you've crossed over into addiction. It's not ever going to go away. And so you have to do other behaviors that are going to prevent you from listening to the part of the brain that's telling you you need to go back out. Here's all, and people, I had a dear friend, little old lady, she had a big beehive hairdo. She talked like this. And no matter what you would say, complaining, she'd just look at you and go, oh, honey, that's the bottle calling. No, it's not. This is important. And I'm thinking, oh, no, honey, that's the bottle calling. Because that's what happens is that we have moved out of desire into survival in our brain. Yeah. That never goes away. So if you're not doing other behaviors, going to meetings, all the things you're supposed to be doing, those thoughts will come back to try to convince you that addiction makes sense. Yeah. Because your brain wants to make sense. Yeah. And just the key to it, you have to pay attention to it, and you never get to stop paying attention to it.
Right. I mean, that one of my favorite spiritual teachers says you can't think your way into right living, but you can live your way into right thinking.
Correct.
So we have to there's actions, and, a 12-step program is very logical to me. Here's the things that you do. Correct. And so if I'm busy doing these quote unquote right things, then I'm not going to be doing the wrong things, right?
Yeah. And if you think about it again, and you're thinking in linear terms, right, wrong, yes, no. I don't think like that. Yeah. And that may be one of the reasons that has made my recovery more comfortable for me than for many. I don't know. I can't judge that for other people. I don't know what they think. Right. But for me, I'm okay with making mistakes. I'm okay with having things go wrong. Yeah. I'm okay with learning from my mistakes. Yeah. I am not a perfectionist. Many addict alcoholic people are, and then they're miserable all the time because things aren't perfect. Right. Whereas I'm very content to be in a human form. That's taken a long time. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. I wasn't like that when I was 35, but I'm like that now at 70. It's a different, some of that's just aging. Yeah. But I really believe that if you stop trying to get it right, that's what I was talking about earlier with the God thing and everything. Yeah. In my opinion, and this worked for me, and I have many women friends with 30, 40 years of sobriety, We all do really fun stuff. I'm a musician. My other girlfriend's a yoga instructor. You know, everybody's doing somebody plays golf. We do fun stuff because we've lived happy, successful lives because we don't worry too much about getting it perfect all the time.
Yeah.
And we just do the best we can with the tools we have. And I've been so blessed because I got out of my own way.
Yeah. And allowed yourself to be human.
And allowed myself to be an artist and creative. And also, it doesn't say, humility is not about becoming a doormat. So for women, a lot of women, you know, they've been abused, bad shit has happened. It's about getting right-sized. If you have big creative, like you said, you're a creative. You have art to share. Yeah. You weren't given those gifts to keep them under the table. Right. You were given those gifts to share. Yeah. Get as big as you need to get, so long as you let go of the results. Yeah. And so long as you give it up to your higher power as the reason with the gratitude and appreciation.
Yeah. When we started this, 5-6 years ago, a friend of mine who I worked in TV with, he said, Christian, your job is to create it and put it out.
Right.
And I've held on to that forever. And the other thing I used to have to tell myself, especially in the beginning, was it's not perfect, but it's done.
Well, I always say the reason I'm a published songwriter is I finished the song.
Yeah.
And there was
because art's never finished; it's just abandoned.
Well, it is what it is, and the thing is that was Laurence Olivier was on the Dick Cavett show. This was even when I was a kid. This was years ago, and he was saying if you were going to have to save your work or your wife, who would you save? And he said neither one. But he was saying the work has to sink or swim on its own.
Yeah. Wow.
And that's just the thing is that I know that I can write a good song. I'm a good songwriter. I was signed by Bobby Darin when I was 19 years old, which was kind of a big deal to be that young and get, somebody famous to sign you to a publishing deal and everything. So I've been told since I was young that I was a good musician and a good, good songwriter, that sort of thing. I've never really, really questioned that. But my ability to put it out there in the market, I'm not good at business. I've got a little ADHD, and I'm not great at figuring out little stuff. Yeah. So I've had to come to acceptance that that's okay. And I've had to ask for the right kind of help. That's the other key message of mine. It's not about asking for help. It's about asking for the right kind of help. Yeah. And that's what the Serenity Prayer is about. The wisdom to know the difference. Yeah. Yeah. It's what it's about. Figuring that out. What is the right kind of help? You have to check in, work at it, because sometimes what you need when you're 40 is not the same as what you need when you're 60. Right. I know this for a fact.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about creativity.
Okay.
So you were obviously creative and creative before, and you're a songwriter and singer. When you became the white chip wonder, and you got sober, what was creativity like for you then in that transition?
I don't know. I really wasn't paying attention at the time. I was paying attention to getting sober.
Were you making music at all?
Oh, yeah. I was in a band. My husband and I had a band together. And, I never stopped doing music. I mean, I always did it.
But the ability to write a song there was no effect in that?
No. Wow. However, I had a lot of musician friends who couldn't play when they got sober because they were so used to playing high. But see, I never played high because I was a binge drinker, and so I would white knuckle it, and I wouldn't play high. So I didn't have that. Yeah. And as far as songwriting was concerned, I mean, I was in a band. I was doing other people's, we toured. I actually went to Athens and made a record in Greece. That was a lot of fun. And drank Retsina, and we were young, and I was, that's what we did. And it was what it was. I had given up hard liquor and drugs when I was 21. But I didn't know wine would hurt me. This was in the 70s. I'd never heard of recovery programs. I don't know anything about it. Right. I knew heroin addicts from the Vietnam War, and they were junkies, and that was that. But I knew nothing about alcoholism. I knew nothing about it.
Yeah.
So I thought if I gave up hard drugs and liquor, because I was taking pills and stuff in college, and we were doing Quaaludes and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I stopped doing all that, and I thought I was safe. But eventually, the wine got me, and because I had a blackout. I didn't know. But I had never. And I would binge drink. I wouldn't drink every day. And I really didn't understand it till a girlfriend of mine who 12-stepped me into AA got sober.
Yeah.
And that's how I found out about recovery, was she said she got thin. I was like, what happened? Because she used to have a beer belly, and it went away. I'm like, whoa, how'd you do that? She said, I quit drinking. And then she said, wouldn't it be nice not to have to think about it? I went, wow. Because I had to plan my hangovers. I had to plan them because I had bad hangovers. I had to, I would drive drunk, because I would be playing a gig, and I wouldn't drink when I was playing until the fourth set. They would send up the wine at the fourth set, and then I would, then drive home with one hand over one eye. Luckily, I lived close to the bar, so it wasn't far.
Right.
But
Or drive between the thumbs.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I earned my seat in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's not, in recovery. I just, but I was what's called a mid-stage alcoholic. I had not reached late-stage alcoholism. People don't know, well, they should know, but alcoholism is a progressive disease.
Yeah.
And I had not reached the stage where I had delirium tremens, where I had to drink every day, where I had to get up in the middle of the night to have a shot. None of that had happened to me when I got sober.
Right.
I was a binge drinker. I had blackouts. I had driven drunk. I had done all that.
Yeah.
But and you can get off the elevator whenever you want.
Right.
And I got off way before my mother did, who did have all those symptoms. She was hospitalized. It took her 10 days the first time she was in because they couldn't get her blood pressure normalized. She was 60 years old at the time. She had neuropathy in her hands and feet. She had to get up in the middle of the night to take a shot of bourbon. She was up to about 17 shots a day, and she was 4'10".
Wow.
Yep. That's what late-stage alcoholism looks like before you get sober.
Yeah.
So I think maybe one of the reasons I stayed sober was I watched my mother.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. But that's some of my story a little bit.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
And so creatively, you were able to just continue on, because I know a lot of people, and even for me, that was a tough thing, and I had to learn, the hard way. I don't want to be crude, but my cocaine was my thing, and so if I did cocaine before the show, I would just stand at the mic with the bike stand, and a buddy of mine was like, "No more cocaine before the show, Christian, because you suck," and so then I would manage it, and I feel like myself too. I liked to work. I liked to have those periods of time when I wasn't intoxicated or under the influence of something, until I couldn't differentiate those times anymore. Right. So getting creative once I got sober was hard at first, because it was hard. The way it would work for me, especially with music, it was like a download. A melody would just hit me, and then I would make it, produce it on the computer or whatever. And it took me a long time, I would say maybe 6 months when I first got sober, before I started getting that melody again.
Well, what happened to me was I had children. So I got pregnant at 2.5, and my husband and I had been in a band together and all that, and we, all that was, and whatever. But I quit smoking cigarettes when I was pregnant with my son, which is 34 years ago. And and luckily I didn't start smoking or drinking again when I had my kid, because there was a part of me that wanted to, but I didn't. And but I developed all this upper register that I didn't have. So I started singing for children. Much of my mid-career was with singing for little kids. For 5-year-olds in Montessori, and I was an artist in residence in a Montessori school for many years, and I did music for little kids. I have an album out called Pineapples, Butterflies, and Dinosaurs, about little guys, because you cannot nurse and rock at the same time, and it's very different doing a show at 9 in the morning than at 9 at night. So it's a very different, and the kids are speaking. It's an honest program. 5-year-olds don't care if you're on pitch. They care if you're honest and authentic. So I could work on my vocals even if they weren't great. The 5-year-olds don't care. Little guys don't care. They just want to work with you, and I would write songs for the little guys and do all that fun stuff with little guys. And then when the kids got older, and I moved through that, and then when my ex-husband and I, is a very nice man, but we were a lot of differences. He wasn't in recovery. I mean, and he didn't need to be, thank God. But we sort of went different ways. We had a tough 9/11. He was an air traffic controller. We lost some people in the plane that hit the Pentagon. I mean, it's some difficulties. But anyway, we split up when, and I said I could either kill myself, buy a new car, or make a record. And I decided to make a record. And I called in some friends from the old days when I had been, in New York, and got some famous people to help me. And I made a record and got nominated for a Washington Area Music Award. Wow. So I went back into writing music for adults, because I had been writing music for kids for about 15 years, and so and creating plays and music for little guys. Yeah. So when you asked about how my creativity changed, the children saved my life. Little guys, love them, because they are they're just completely real, and you can't fake them out. You know how that is. 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, you have to tell them the truth. So I worked on my vocals and things like that, not on purpose, just that's what happened. But when the kids got older, and then when my husband and I split up, I went back in the music business and have been doing adult music since then, and doing folk records and things like that, and it's been awesome.
Well, and that speaks a little bit to the non-judgment of yourself and your creative expression, and just period, not having that judgment mind as the primary driver, because it allowed you. Because a lot of people I can hear people in my head saying, oh, now you're making music for kids, or, you were doing this, and now you're here, but not having that judgment and allowing it to be what it is, and going through the seasons, and then coming out on the other side. Now you have a new register that you have honed, and so you can write songs in a different way, and you would have never had it if you would have had that judgment mind being the primary driver in your life.
Without question. And see, you nailed it, because that's exactly what I believe living a fully realized spiritual adult life is about. I am a fully realized spiritual adult, and at 70, I better be. Come on. If not now, when? And everyone talks about, well, someday. I'm like, well, now is a good time. Yeah. And I've been doing this a long time. So what I feel like, what happens when I talk like this is many, mostly men, think I'm being really arrogant. They consider it super arrogant. But the truth is that it's step into your power as a human, not into your power as a god, right, but into your power as a human being. Step into it. Be the best person you can be. Be the most giving person you can be. Give back in whatever way is meaningful for you. Allow for abundance. A lot of alcoholics don't allow for abundance. Yeah. And that's so sad, because most of us are, kind of cool and fun to be with. Yeah. Open your heart and then let that in, and then you can have a very rich, fulfilled life. And it's not about the money. It's about filling that God hole. Yeah. Which is what I call it. That that black hole that used to fill with alcohol. Yeah. I fill that with God consciousness of some sort. Yeah. And I'm living proof. Yeah. Because I love my life. It's great. Is it hard sometimes? Yes. Yeah. Did I lose my mother? Yes. Did I have cancer? Yes. Did I lose a baby? Yes. In recovery? Yes. I didn't drink over any of that. Yeah. So, that's the whole thing. You have to decide that's no longer an option. We were talking about that earlier. Yeah. It has to not be an option. As long as you make it an option, then my friend Louise will say, that's the bottle calling.
Right. Yeah. I find, like, for a lot of people that there is a point in time when I've heard it so many times where something happens in life and they realize, oh, I didn't think about drinking. Mm-hmm. I didn't think about getting high. And it's almost like, it happens for us in a way, right?
Without
doing
question.
something for God, doing for us what we cannot do for ourselves. And there's a natural thing where it's just it stops becoming an option, and it's beautiful when you allow yourself to experience that, right?
Well, and I don't even know if I'm allowing myself to experience that. I know some people. I have a friend who in the meeting, an elder gentleman who's lovely, who was struck sober. I mean, literally, he talks about it as a spiritual experience.
Oh.
And, he was struck sober. And I didn't have that experience. But what he talks about, and I agree with this, getting sober is one thing. Staying sober is a whole nother kettle of fish.
Yeah.
And if you accept those are two separate things, and you really, once you've gotten sober and you've gotten the toxicity out of your body, now, how do you stay sober? The way you stay sober is you learn how to love life.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's not hard. It's just sometimes life sucks. It's really hard. Sometimes you lose people you love. Relationships. I'm divorced in AA, and I'd go to a meeting, and this guy would say, "Your face at the beginning of the meeting is like all drawn," and by the end of the meeting, my face would lighten because the meeting would help me get through whatever it was that I was going through. And my ex-husband paid for my kids' college and is a good guy, and I really like his second wife. She's adorable. That doesn't happen outside of AA. It just doesn't.
Right. Yeah. One of the things you said, I think, is there's an idea of what we think the spiritual life is. And I think there's this ideal of we make it, right? And understanding that the spiritual life is about, it's like 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, 2 steps forward, 1 step forward, 3 steps back. And sometimes at least that's been my experience of like, there are days and moments and throughout the course of a day where I can go from this sense of feeling super connected to feeling completely not connected, and realizing that is the deal. That's the thing. The thing is weaving in and out of whatever words you want to put there, alignment or
Except, I'm going to say something. You need to develop a daily spiritual practice. Now, here's the deal.
Yeah.
You need to have a plan A, but you also need to have a plan B and a plan C and a plan D. And if you can't do the ashram for 2 hours and you can't do, the breathing, take 4 deep breaths. Do something every day because it's one day at a time.
Yeah.
And if you're leaning in towards your spiritual program, even on a bad day, having that discipline to do it every single day and find the dumbest thing, the smallest thing that's, like I said, I have one where you call in the 4 directions by breathing 4 deep breaths. That's it. Some days that's all I can do.
Yeah.
Some days that's it. That's all I can do. But I do something every day. And I think it's real important for people to remember that because they think, if I can't do the big, huge thing, then I'm going to quit.
And they give up on the whole thing.
And they let go of the whole thing. You always have a plan B and a plan C, and just do something every day. And then the next day you might do more. The next and 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Yes, but it's really not linear.
Right.
It's more that you're moving in the right direction, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, but it will always materialize if you work for it.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to quote, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. The other thing with the daily disciplines is, I like to switch it up, Yeah. And there's been periods of time when a walk is the thing, and I'll take a really long walk. And there are times when, there's a bunch of books here. I don't think they're on camera. But there's some times when I'm like, I'm not reading that book today because I'm tired of this author beating my ass every day. So I'm going to read these other one. But I'm reading something, and I'm sitting at some point. And if it doesn't happen in the first part of the day, when I realize I can stop and do it then. And it's taking the judgment of it and saying, it has to be a certain way in order for it to do the thing. Yep. And that's kind of magical thinking.
Spiritual development evolves.
Yeah.
That's just true.
Yeah.
Just like physical development
Ideally,
evolves.
it evolves.
No. It always evolves. Maybe not for better. There's no stopping it.
Yeah.
We don't have, I am powerless over people, places, and things, and that includes spiritual life.
Wow.
And if you accept that, again, this is all about radical acceptance. Are you familiar with the concept?
I've heard of it.
Well, radical acceptance is about not only am I where I'm supposed to be, but you're where you're supposed to be. And I need to let go of expectation of other people, of it should be, and shoulda, oughta, coulda is not something that I'm involved in today. You can't help it. We all do it some. I'm not saying I do this perfectly, but, idealistically, I move in the direction of being completely open to what is being offered to me by the universe on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Just being open to it, and trust and allow should be on everybody's refrigerator. Trust and allow. And if you're calling your God Jesus, if you're calling your God Buddha, if you are calling your God the group of drunks, whatever you're calling the God of your understanding, allow for the God of your understanding to do the work.
Yeah.
Just create intention, put yourself out there, and work on developing intention so that you can then manifest a life worth living.
Yeah. Yeah, that word's been coming up a lot. And I have a man who's a mentor of mine, and he's around 30 years sober, and whenever I start bitching, he always comes back with, just keep doing what you're doing, keep doing the right thing, quote unquote, right? Like, keep doing the thing, keep giving back, keep being of service, and it's all going to come together.
Because it's the thing about, is it odd or is it God?
Huh.
It's in God's time, not your time.
Right.
And that's the part we don't like.
Yeah.
Because I want it all yesterday to be what I want.
Yeah.
And when I do that, I'm cutting out, for example, maybe me being on the show with you has a higher purpose that I'm not aware of.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be cool? You know?
Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah.
It's like I would put limits on myself that I don't think my higher power puts on me.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Kale, you had a lot of questions in your outline. I want to see if there's anything we're missing, but this has been amazing. I'm so glad that you're here. And we're getting I feel like we're in the cosmos a little bit right now, which is, I love it.
Good.
Yeah. Kale, did you have anything you felt like you wanted to add into us?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, we touched on a lot about, we kind of got to some of the questions organically, which was pretty cool to see. One thing I was interested about, because you kind of talked about, and I had some questions about your upbringing in Unitarianism. I know that's not what you technically practice now, but it seems that you've.
I am a Unitarian Universalist. Yes, okay. I am. I'm careful about church attendance only because I have 5 Unitarian ministers in my family, so I speak what's called MSL, ministry as a second language, and you don't want to have me on your board or anything because, I have way too many opinions. So, but what did you want to know about Unitarian Universalist? Is very similar to AA.
Well, so one thing that we talked. This was over the weekend, but. And I actually heard you say this in another place to a group of people, but about how it was easier for you to come into AA because you had this non-judgment, kind of more open-minded, and then people who come from more fundamentalist, strict, kind of religious dogma ideology, that it's a lot harder for them. So I guess your experience on seeing people who struggle and how it's either been beneficial to assimilate into 12-step and kind of higher power-based thinking.
Yeah, well, sometimes I have envied people who have a very simplistic, fundamentalist view of God. I think that must be very comforting. But since I wasn't raised with that, I was raised with developing a God of my understanding, which is very much what they talk about in recovery, which is find a God of your understanding. So my whole upbringing had been about seeking. In fact, in the Unitarian Church, they don't let you join till you're 16, and they have children's programs which are called Church Across the Street, where they take you to all the different churches and you figure out which one you want to go to.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow, yeah.
And so it's not about indoctrination. It's about the inherent worth and dignity of all living things, and wanting to include rather than exclude.
Yeah.
And so people who are famous Unitarians from the olden days are people like Emerson and Thoreau, also many of the suffragettes. Here in Atlanta, the Atlanta church, the Unitarian church, was the first to integrate. So, I mean, that kind of thing. They've been very involved in social action.
Yeah.
So that's it. So it's also about praying with your feet. So that's another thing is that social action, helping people, actually doing something, not just talking about doing something, all this prayer and meditation stuff to people who just got shot. It's not a lot of use. Go bring them some food,
Right.
That kind of thing. Being more social activity is important. But I also know people who have come into found things like Buddhism, or found where they came from a traditional background and they found another way to be, or paganism, also, Druidism. There are all kinds of nature-based Native Americans who have had such a problem with alcoholism since we introduced it, to them many years ago. But the point is that you go to meetings with Native Americans and they don't say the Lord's Prayer. They say Great Spirit, and you find what works for you to connect you with Spirit. I tend to think it's all one big thing, and we just have different semantics depending
Right.
upon who you are and where you're from. But I'm not going to tell you you're wrong and that I'm right unless you're being exclusive and you're saying, well, I'm right and all these people are bad and going to hell. I'm not real good with all that
Yeah.
stuff. So just that's me, though.
You have a hard time with that one.
Yeah, I have a hard time with that.
Yeah. What else you got?
Well, it got me kind of thinking about, you've mentioned seeking a lot, and I think that's something I've tried to apply, and but it's an action, and it kind of implies an ongoing, thing. And so how has your version or idea of a higher power changed or morphed over the years?
Well, I think the idea of exploring my intuition, which I worked with my friend Nina, who's also a trained shaman, where we really looked at how to connect. If you look at physics, if you look at like the wave theory and things like that, it's about a subatomic connection, that we are all connected at some level. I think a lot of this stuff can be scientifically proven. Eventually, it just isn't proven now. It's just like we're learning more. The phenomenon of craving, they used to think it was a phenomenon. Now they know what causes it.
Right.
I mean, these things evolve. We learn about things. But for me, my higher power has been an acceptance of really being okay with not knowing, and at the same time still trusting that I'll be okay. So that's trusting the universe will be there to support me. And so what I say is I now float down the river of life. I no longer swim upstream. So more is available to me. More love, more connection, more experiences are available to me because I no longer fight the river.
Yeah.
That's what really, and you'll find many of us old timers, we're just kind of relaxed about stuff because I'm done fighting. I have no interest in that.
Yeah.
I don't want to fight anybody. I want to enjoy and help and support.
Yeah.
But I want to keep my energy for fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What else you got, Cal?
I mean, I'll switch gears a little bit. This one's more on the edge of voyeurism, but
Wait, what?
not like
Go ahead on. I'm ready. I can take it. I'm a little old lady. I'm good.
not that kind of voyeurism.
Oh, I was hoping. Okay, you get to be my age. You hope. Oh, my God, you hope.
Not that kind of show, bro.
Okay. Oh, well.
No, so I remember you saying you kind of grew up. I have this idea. You grew up in New York in the 70s, and I have this idea of what that was like in my head. Can you kind of talk about what that was like, good or bad?
Yeah. Have you ever seen the show Vinyl on HBO?
No.
That's what it was like. Okay, Mick Jagger's son produced that show. It was insane. I lived in the West Village. I was signed to Warner Chapel Music. I mean, I was hanging with people like Todd Rundgren and, Hall and Oates and all those guys. And plus, my best friend's boyfriend was a big drug dealer. So there was always exciting, crazy stuff going on. And I was 16 when I went to college, so I was very young. And I was at Hofstra University on Long Island. And I got signed at 19, and I got to play with John Lennon's band, Elephant's Memory. They did my demos, and all kinds of cool stuff like that. And I got to meet Mick Jagger and all that sort of stuff. And my first job in New York too was straight job was at Saks Fifth Avenue, on the Fifth Avenue store right there at 30 Rock. And so got to see all the celebrities and all that sort of stuff. And it was very exciting. And, I was then in a band called Kid Creole and the Coconuts, and they were a pretty famous band in Europe and South America. So we'd go to Studio 54 and have bodyguards and everything. It was real cool. But crazy and a little more than I could handle. Like, I was not a good drug addict. I was not a good alcoholic. I was a cheap drunk. I couldn't handle much at all. And so part of it was starting to make me sick. So I could only handle so much. But the music was unbelievable. I was at Chapel Music, and we had the in-house studio there because they didn't have home studios. There was no such thing.
Right.
So everybody made their demos there, like Paul Schaefer from, everybody. James Brown came in and cut the front of a record. I get to meet everybody because they would all come to Chapel Music, which is the largest publisher in the world at the time. And, we get to do all kinds of cool stuff. And so the music was phenomenal, and I was blessed to get to work with some of the best people in the world. So I've been very, very lucky.
Yeah.
But the scene for women at the time was horrible. Women were treated, like dirt, or like possessions is really better because I was cute. So, they wanted me to be cute. And talent really didn't have a whole lot to do with it.
Yeah.
Those were the times. So, but it was very exciting, and I loved it.
So you look back at these times now and with fondness, it sounds like.
Without question, because we have a step that says, I cease to regret the past, and I no longer shut the door on it.
Yeah.
Now, I divide that into two sections. I ceased to regret the past a long time ago. I shut the door on it for quite a number of years because I needed to be separated from all that crazy. But a number of years into my recovery, my kids were in their, 10, 12, whatever. I went back to some college reunions and things in New York and reconnected with some of my music friends and with some other people and took back the part that was good. See, that's the thing. When you've done all this crazy stuff, not everything was bad. Not all the people were bad. Not everything you did was bad. You have to pull out the parts that were good and remind yourself. I have college friends who I adore, and I'm still friends with them. They're very successful people. I mean, my friends have gone on to careers. One guy was head of HBO, another famous actors. I mean, I'm not going to go into too much of that, but I got to go and spend the summer in Malibu and hang out. It was this was in recovery.
Yeah.
And so I just have always felt that you need to take time with that, though. If you've had a rough time, don't jump right back into those bars and that kind of crazy, or you may regret it, or you may end up drunk or high, whatever.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I think there was a time, or I guess a season of time, when I removed myself from a lot of stuff. But then there was also this, and I don't know what it was, but there's kind of like before sobriety, like everything didn't count or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then at a certain point, it was like, oh, actually, like I lived a life,
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like, what a lucky luck, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, what a blessing to be able to have lived and have all this wealth of experience, and then to now be living in the way that I do now. It's totally not fair. But for some reason, it took me a while to be able to embrace that,
Mm-hmm.
right? And understand that there was a season and a period of time when there was a lot of great things happening.
Oh, yeah.
And even though drugs and alcohol were part of the picture, and there is kind of this point, though, right, where
where it
turns.
crosses over. Yeah, but you were not a bad person getting good. You were a sick person getting well.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing is a lot of people, there are people who are bad people who are alcoholics, and there are people that are good people that are alcoholics. Alcoholism has nothing to do with morality.
Right.
It has to do with, it's a biological problem. It does affect behavior, so there are many things we do that we wouldn't have done had we not been drinking or drugging. Absolutely not, and we're responsible, and we have to take charge of that. That's what the 4th step's all about, and the 9th step, it's there. We have, take care of it. But if you lived a life, some people didn't. Some people didn't. But if you did, which I did, I had people that I loved and friends, and I had not reached that stage where I was a mess. So, I had lots of good things that I am now able, as an elder, to be able to return to my friends. One of my dear friends just wrote a wonderful book about cannabis, of all things. It's a big, and it's a big picture book, and it's getting all kinds of press and everything. And he took the photographs, and he's thrilled. He's not one of us, so he's great. And I got to talk to him today, and he's my age, and he's got a big bestseller book out.
Right.
How marvelous is that I can go, love you, think it's great. And I don't judge.
Right.
The fact that I can't do it is not the point,
Yeah. We did an outreach in the neighborhood here, and just to let people know that, hey, we're here, and if you got anyone who's suffering and you need help, you got neighbors, right? And a couple people came up, and they had their beer and their cozy, and it's okay if I have this. And I was like, yeah. I mean, we're not anti-alcohol. We're letting you know, like if someone has a problem, we're here to help. But if you can have that beer and then go home and go to sleep and have a regular night, that's awesome for you, right? And people understanding that it's like, I'm not anti really with this stuff, because a lot of people can do it moderately.
Especially when they're young.
Yeah.
But I'm going to tell you, when they get older, not so much. And I'm going to tell you, because it's like adult onset diabetes. A lot of people get diabetes when they're older.
And you never know when it hits.
And you never know when it's going to hit. So it's important to pay attention to that. And also, I'm going to make a PSA right now. If you're older and you want to quit drinking, go to the doctor. Because it can kill you coming off of alcohol. You can end up with a stroke. All kinds of things can happen. So don't just jump off the alcohol wagon without checking with a doctor or somebody, because it's one thing if you're young, but if you're over 50, I would not recommend doing it without a medical, okay from somebody.
Yeah.
That's a PSA. Okay.
Yeah, I'm glad you did that. Well, speaking of PSAs, as we're wrapping up, what we usually ask guests to do is just to talk to that person who might be on the other end of this, who is struggling and wants to make a decision to change their life and live along a new way. What would you say to a person who is considering a new way of life?
What would I say to a person who's considering a new way of life? I would say, think about it. But what I would really say is you have to be serious about it if you really want to do this. In the old days, the little old ladies would hand you $20 and say, come back when you're serious. Because if you're not serious, you're going to go back out. And it's that simple. And that was the way it was done, because I came in, I was quote-unquote high bottom. I hadn't had a DUI there. But they said, if you don't put the skull and crossbones on the bottle now, you will relapse. They didn't say you might relapse or a poor kid or honey. They said, here's $20. Go out and come back when you're ready to take it seriously. So what I would say is, if you're not taking the 20 and you're ready to take it seriously, then get your butt to a meeting and go to 90 meetings in 90 days. And you're going to hear a lot of things you don't like. And you're not going to like everybody. And if you like everybody in AA, you're not going to enough meetings. So what you need to do is you need to go and take what you can, leave the rest, get a sponsor, and do the steps. And we did all the steps the first 90 days. That was old school. That's how we did it. Yeah. And I just believe that, and there are exceptions to that. People with mental illness or other things. But I'm talking about if somebody's really serious about recovery, then get their butt to a meeting, listen to other people talking, and find somebody who you can relate to and ask them to be your sponsor and get help and do 90 meetings in 90 days.
Yeah.
That would be what I would tell them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well said. All right. Thank you. I'm going to do an out, and then I'm going to do an in. Is that cool?
Yeah.
All right.
We'll do the out now. Hang on.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to The Most High Show. If you have heard anything and you need help and you want to reach out, if we don't have the solution, we can connect you to someone who might. Christian at themosthighshow.com. Download the Most High Media app. You got a lot of documentaries, TV shows, a lot of stories that you can relate to. We are here to help. This has been The Most High Show. All right, and then let me do the intro. Everybody's okay? You good, Brooksie?
I'm always good.
Yeah, all right. Ladies and gentlemen, here at The Most High Show, we have a special guest. Special than more special. And she's sitting in the seat of service. Brooksie Wells was a child of the 60s whose father was a civil rights activist from the deep South. She discovered by Bob Darin at 19. Brooksie wrote for years for chapel music, with several of her songs being used in recordings and movie soundtracks. Her early demos were with John Legend's band. No, I said Legend. That's not the John.
John Lennon.
That's not the John. John Lennon's band, Elephant Memory, and she was also the singer with Kid Creole and the Coconuts. What a great band name. Her new album, Stops Time, was number 4 on the folks charts in the USA, making it her third top 10 album in a row.
Mm-hmm.
These sets of songs reflects the humor and pathos of being present and observing her own joys and mistakes. Brooksie's songs like her life are at heart about connection. Welcome, Brooksie, to The Most High Show.
Yeah.
I jumbled that up, but it ain't perfect, but it's done.
You can clean it up. Well, that was fun, guys. I had a good time.
Yeah, thank you. Me
You're
too.
welcome.